This is the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game.
Rule number one is you have to believe in yourself. You're the only one who doesn't think you belong in this appointment. The prospect has already validated your existence by scheduling time with you. Get it through your head you belong here, go in there, crush it, and close the deal.
A place where sales professionals can come to learn from other sales professionals and thought leaders that have mastered their craft.
The difference between a good salesperson and a best-in-class salesperson is only 2 minutes. By spending an extra 2 minutes on what you might think is a mundane task in the sales game, you separate yourselves from the pack, you grow your book of business, you close more deals, and you retain your accounts.
As well as their peers who are still striving for perfection to achieve their why.
I have a wife and 4 kids. Failure is not an option.
Real sales professionals, real stories, real results. Are you ready to feel the power?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast. I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, Kyle Houck. Some of you may not even know him. He hasn't been here in months, it seems like. We've been hit or miss since the whole office relocation thing and everything else. I got to give him a little bit of a hard time, but we are coming off of a couple pretty solid weekends, man.
Yeah. So I used to think that I had like a pretty good immune system. and apparently I was just good at staying away from people that were sneezing directly into my eyeballs.
You didn't have kids. I mean, that's exactly what it was. You did not have carrier monkeys coming home from school every day. And even when you had Nash, you guys kept him at home. So he didn't go.
He didn't start school till August, man.
He wasn't going to the Crucible every day, man.
Walking Petri dish. It's disgusting. It's like, it just, oh God, I see his fingers and I'm just like, oh.
You know, it's funny, man. We were walking down Fifth Avenue and Annie was like, I think I'd really like a soft pretzel. And so she goes to walk over to this food cart, and at exactly that time, this guy just sticks his grimy bear paw into the pile of pretzels. God. And I told her, I'm like, did you even take a second to look at the underneath of that dude's fingernails? She, by the way, did not buy the pretzel. She also had seen it. But I'm just like, this is insane. People want to know why they get sick, man. What are people doing ordering this food?
So a kid is one thing, like, you know, it's relatively unavoidable. And if you're an adult grown person and you're sticking your disgusting hands into like a public food situation like that, like
dude was lying down the block.
Where are the tongs? Are there no tongs?
They were sitting right there hanging on the food cart.
Good Lord.
Anyhow, good weekend. This weekend had a better weekend. I don't want to say a better week. We're saying last weekend also pretty solid.
Yeah. Yep.
We were able to get the Houck family over to the Addition in Tampa and provide a wonderful spa afternoon for our wives and a nice dinner and just a chance to get them out of the house since they've been dealing with sick kids for the better part of the last couple of months, man. Anyhow,
it's been absurd, and that was much appreciated.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. But today we got a good guest. We got Ryan Reynolds. Now, for those of you who have Mint Mobile, this is not the customer service line. You know, this wrong Ryan Reynolds. I'd argue this.
No Wrexham soccer.
Yeah. You know, it's funny too, because I feel like there's been multiple times that I've been in conversations where I've said Ryan Reynolds and it would apply to either the actor or this Ryan Reynolds, but I'm talking about the Ryan Reynolds from Grimes Insurance in Lubbock, Texas. And we're going to talk a little bit about his journey. And, you know, Ryan and I don't know each other personally as well as I think either one of us would like to, but that'll come with time. I want to hear more about your backstory, man, and how you got the agency, how you got involved in the agency. And then let's talk a little bit about what we always talk about, what you're doing and what can we learn from each other.
Yeah. It sounds great. Look forward to it.
And you're the host of a podcast too. So we need to make sure we plug that while we're on there.
Yeah. Insurance leaders, man. That's where it's at.
Exactly. Cool. So as we get kicked off, man, why don't you just sort of give a little bit about your background and what led you to, because you acquired Grimes. You didn't build Grimes from scratch. You know, I think it's actually, I do know enough about that story to know that it's a pretty cool story because your agency is old as Methuselah where it's at.
Yeah. It's this past October, just a couple months ago, we turned 75. So it's been
Wow.
here in Lubbock, Texas for 75 years.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
how did you get involved?
You want the long story or the short one?
I don't
We're
know. We
here
got
for
like an
another
hour, so
Yeah, we're here for another 49 minutes, man. So whatever floats your boat.
All right. So long story short, I was a college student and got recruited by State Farm while I was still a student, and went and worked in their claims department as a customer service, kind of stuffing envelopes and answering phones and routing phone calls till I finished my degree. Pretty quickly on, I knew I wanted to be a State Farm agent, or I thought I did. Matter of fact, funny story, I was a pre-med student, and a mentor of mine had come to me and said, why do you want to go into medicine? And I said, well, really what I want to do is I want to own, a chain of pediatric clinics or something like that. And he kind of laughed and he said, you know how much money that's going to cost? You know how much debt you're going to be in when you finish school? Let me show you a way where you can make just as much, if not more, and not acquire, half as much debt. So that kind of got me on my path to being a State Farm agent. So I worked for State Farm for 16 and a half years. I was an agent for about 3. And then I was on the corporate side, kind of agency leadership, and then climbed up my way into the executive offices, executive leadership for State Farm. And about year 14 or 15 at State Farm, I got to a point, man, where I just, in my opinion, and what I share with people is I felt like State Farm at the time, and still to some degree, is suffering from an identity crisis. They're their largest home and auto carrier in the country. They wanted to be in the banking business, the mortgage business, all these different entities. And really what they were doing is they were sucking the profits from the home and auto business, pouring them back into losing propositions into their mortgage business and the banking business and all those things. Meanwhile, you got at the ground level, you got all these independent State Farm agents who are dying because they don't have competitive rates, because they're taking all the profits and investing in all these other companies. And I just got to the point where it really became a moral dilemma for me. I felt like I couldn't sell the opportunity and couldn't stand behind it any longer, and really just lost interest in it. So when I finally got to the point where I decided I'm going to go back and be an agent, I put a pen to paper and tried to make the State Farm agent opportunity work again. I was going to go back and be a State Farm agent, and I just couldn't. Number wise, once you get to know me, you'll know me. I'm an analytical person. I'm a numbers guy and an Excel geek. I just couldn't make the numbers work. I couldn't put my life savings into an opportunity that I didn't believe in, that I was going to be able to get a sizable return. So literally, and Dave, you'll love this, I wanted to be here in Lubbock, Texas. I've been here in Lubbock for 5 years or so. I'd grown really fond of the community. It's about 300,000 people. It's the home of Texas Tech. I love college sports. It's a great place to raise kids. I have 4 kids. And so I literally just picked up the phone and started cold calling independent agents. Told them who I was and what I wanted to do, and asked them if they were willing to either bring on a partner or sell. And that's how I ended up with Grimes. Mariana Grimes picked up the phone and took my call, and she said, well, as a matter of fact, we're entertaining offers right now.
Wow.
And she really didn't take me too seriously, because they had offers from, if you're familiar with them, Gallagher and some of these big conglomerates. And
yeah, but I bet you none of them called up and asked them if they would be willing to take on a partner too.
No, they didn't. Mariana Grimes sought them out. So after several pesky phone calls and being kind of a pest to them, they finally relented and gave me an opportunity to talk to them. I took them to lunch, and walked away from that lunch with them saying, if we can make it work, I want to sell to this guy. So fast forward about a year, the transaction took 8 months, 10 months, something like that. Closed on the business. I bought the business, and I've owned it. January 1st will be 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, man, because I have to believe that part of number one, if you're a 75-year-old agency, I don't care how much money you're offered, how much money you walk away with. there will always be some level of buyer's remorse. And the reason I know that is because 100% of my friends that have sold for even north of 10 million walk away and they still miss being in the agents. I shouldn't say buyer's remorse might not be the right word, but there's still a void that's left because we're so committed to being in our operations every single day. And it's a business that's held very, very closely, not just by you, but also by your team. Your team members are investing in it. They've given a portion of their lives and everything else. So, I mean, if I had to guess, to my point, when I made the comment earlier, I have to believe that by showing you wanted to work side by side as a partner probably brought down some resistance from them, because anybody else is just going to buy it and do whatever they want with it. You're showing you don't have an interest in changing necessarily the culture, the operations, or any of that. You're just looking for a place to hang your hat when they're ready to retire.
Yep. So the best question I asked at that lunch, and they walked into that lunch really skeptical, and I think literally if you asked Mariana today, they took that lunch as a kind of a pity lunch, because I wouldn't leave them alone. I just bugged the crap
Those are my
out.
favorite though, right? Because they're completely underestimating you.
Yep, completely underestimating. So we sat down at lunch and they were telling me about their agency as a whole, how many team members, their premium revenue, all that kind of stuff. And that they had I think they had 3 or 4 other offers from these large firms. And the best question I asked was, why haven't you taken one?
Right. Yeah, why are you sitting here talking with me if you've got a bunch of other offers on the table that are
and you
from big
clearly
companies?
know that I'm the underdog.
Yeah.
Why are we here today?
Probably because you were badgering them and they were persistent.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So their answer was, well, number one, they want to decentralize our agency and we care about our team members. I think at the time they had about 12 or 14 team members. We care about our team, their family, and they're going to lose their jobs. Number two, we care about our family's name. It's on the sign. That means something to us. And those are the 2 reasons we haven't sold yet. And I said, then I'm your solution. I'll make you a promise. I'm not going to fire a single one of them. I'm not going to change anything. No processes, no system. I'm not going to change anything for a year. And number 2, I promise you, when you come back in 10 or 15 years, you're going to be proud of what the Grimes name still means in this town. I make those promises to you. And still to this day, those are promises that I kept and I intend to keep.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the thing is, man, when you have an agency that's family name, 75 years in existence, the last move you want to do is to change the name of the agency.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't want to change the name of the agency. And here's the other thing. Think about this. The difference between captive insurance and independent insurance is like night and day. It's like light and dark. I knew nothing, and I was smart enough to know that I didn't know anything. Sure. So I wasn't going to change a thing for a year. So my first year, literally, I sat knee to knee, toe to toe with every single one of my team members. I want to know what you do every day. I want to know every button you poke, and I want to know why you poke that button and why you do this and how you do this. So I needed a quick education. I need a master's degree in 12 months is what I needed. And
so what was the most fun about that process?
I think more than anything is, so here's the magic in it. And this is not why I was doing it, but the side benefit was trust. Those team members who had, we're talking 50, 60, 70-year-olds who just saw me as a punk, I think I was 40 at the time, 39, 40. I was this punk kid that was coming in to change everything and change their lives. And I was going to turn this into a corporate this and a corporate that. It was trust. So that was the magic potion that allowed me to, after that first 12 months, to really go in and start implementing processes and systems and scale and just blow this thing up. And it was all that time, that first year I just spent side by side with them, learning their jobs, learning their kids' names, their husband's name, what they did for a living, all those things.
I mean, there had to be some challenges with that, right?
Yeah. Biggest challenge was, so I'm an efficiency person, right? And I'm seeing them do everything 3 and 4 times. And I'm like, in the State Farm world, State Farm agents, they do not know how good they have it. State Farm does everything for them. And so I quickly learned why so many people don't become independent agents. I mean, the amount of work and latency was just incredible. So there were some significant learnings for me, and I'm not gonna lie, there was a lot of nights I went home just like, what the hell did I just do? This is crazy.
Well, the other thing too, though, is, I mean, you have so many decisions that you have to make as an independent agency principal that is a captive agency principal, you simply don't have to make.
Yeah.
Agency management system, CRM, any of that stuff is already decided for you. So I don't think people understand. I think that independent agents understand, but I don't think that the general public and the captives really understand, unless they've stepped over to the independent side, just how stressful and strenuous that process can be, because you don't have you have peer groups that you can rely on to ask questions to, but again, you have to pre-qualify all of that, because every Tom, Dick, and Harry on the internet is going to give you an answer to a question, and you don't know what size, shape their agency is. Does it matter what the mix of business we're writing? What about the geography? We run into this with Killing Commercial all the time, man. There are times where I have to say, look, I honestly can't give you a good answer to this because we don't deal with this in Florida. Let me find somebody in my network that's going to be a better resource for you than what I can be, because I don't want to give you bad information. But it's like literally you go from a position where you, and I don't think that it's a bad move, man. I think there's a certain appeal to the captive side where you can go in, you can focus on selling and taking care of your clients and call it a day. And over here, we have to make a decision about literally everything. Now, I wouldn't change where I'm at now for anything, but I don't know that the captive gig is necessarily bad. If you just want to be able to go in and sell and make money and lead a team, you can still fulfill a lot of those things that leaders want inside of the captive relationship. It's just a different setup.
The trade-off for the freedom to be able to make your own decisions on everything that you just talked about.
Well, and so you talk about that, Kyle, freedom, right? You've got freedom to be able to make all those decisions, but that freedom's also it's debilitating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have so many freaking
paralysis.
Paralysis by analysis. And then couple that with this. So I've had agency owners tell me, "Oh, you bought your agency. That's the easy way." I'm like, bro, you don't know. Check this out. This true story. Month 1, I don't know anything. I don't even know my team member's name. And in 30 days from now, I got a $75,000 monthly principal and interest payment. Imagine going to sleep at night with that burden. I don't know anything about the business I just bought. I know insurance, but I know very little about this business. And in 29 days from today, I got a $75,000 principal and interest payment every single month for the next 10 years. I mean, the stress with that is just, and on top of that, trying to commit to really for 12 months, not change anything, to learn process and learn systems, and not just go do your very best to turn on the production switch, but to really learn the business, to be able to change it and to modernize it. So here's where we were at. And I say this out of zero disrespect to Mariana Grimes, because she built an incredible agency. When I bought it, they were at 2.5 million in revenue. I don't remember what they were at premium wise, but 2.5 million. I think they were about 15 million in revenue, somewhere in that ballpark. 2.5 million in revenue. So when I bought the agency, somebody would call in and ask for a homer on auto quote. They would transfer them to a salesperson. The salesperson would write down on a printed Word document their name, address, phone number, roof age, all that kind of stuff. They'd put it in a manila folder. They would walk it back over to somebody else, who then opened it, inputted all the information into a rater, quoted it. They'd put the sheet back of paper. They'd print all the quotes off. They put it back in the manila folder. They'd walk it back to the producer. The producer would then have the conversation, sell the policy, make all their notes on paper, then put it back in a manila folder, walk it up to a customer service rep and say, "Hey, I need you to issue this on the 15th of next month." Yeah. It was so antiquated in how they did things. And I'm a process, I'm a system, I'm a tech guy. So I'm like, I'm dying here. We have got so much opportunity to modernize this thing. And then if that's the team members' experience, imagine trying to recruit team members into that environment and to modernize the agency from a tech side. And then what kind of experience are the customers having if they're waiting 3 and 4 days for quotes? And there's So anyways, all that to be said is that it was a mountain to climb to get to the point we're in now. And fortunately, like I said, January 1st will be 5 years. We've doubled. We'll barely surpass 5 million in revenue this year. And I think premium, for those that think in premium, I think we're about 35 million in premium. So
those people don't listen to this podcast, Ryan.
Okay, good.
We've tried to train them and filter them out as much as possible.
Good. So we've had a heck of a ride, and it's been a ton of fun. Is without question has been a ton of work. And people ask me, how have I never heard of you? Why do I not know you? And the answer is, man, because I was buried in the sand. My head was literally nose to the grindstone for 4 years before we could pick our heads up enough to pay attention to what's going on in the industry. And we're just trying to build systems, processes, and modernize this beast so we can scale it and put the thing on steroids and move it along.
So what have you done? Obviously, like, you didn't touch anything for a year, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you wanted to see how things kind of worked and shook out. What have you done to create efficiencies within the agency over the last 4 years to kind of get it more in line with technology and just the way you operate?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing probably that speaks and most people can understand is I had sales producers that were making, I don't remember what they were making. Let's just say it was $40,000 or $50,000 a year. And they were doing the job of $10 an hour employees. They were pushing paper. They were doing all those things. So consequently, the most they could really do is they could have about 8 conversations a day, 6 to 8 conversations a day. And I said, man, if we're going to scale this thing, we've got to change that. We've got to be able to create an ability for them to have 25 to 50 actual sales conversations a day. And the only way to do that is to get all the service work and all the paper and all the processes off of them. So I really went to work on building, and this was not only a piece to help improve the customer experience and not only to make the lives of my sales team members easier, but it was also a product I was trying to create so I could go out and recruit more salespeople. So I knew that's what I needed, is more salespeople. And so we basically built this process, Kyle, where now when somebody's calling in or we're talking to somebody, that my sales team, all they do is have a sales conversation. That's it. They don't quote anybody. They don't issue policies. They don't take applications. They're not chasing clients for signatures. They're literally just having sales conversations. And we built processes on the back end where, so I think of the team, I think we have about 15 virtual employees now, and they're doing all the quoting. They're doing all the service work. They're doing all the application pieces. And my salespeople, and that's the product that I can sell now to recruits is, if they've got experience somewhere else, the question I always ask them is, what do you hate about your job now? You're a State Farm team member, a Farmers team member, or you're working an independent. What do you hate most about your job? Well, what do they always say? I hate applications. I hate paperwork. I hate customer service work. Come work at Grimes. You don't do any of that. You literally sell all day long. That's all you do is have sales conversations. So that, while that's a broad brush there, Kyle, basically what we did is just modernized all the processes to include, my theory was I want $30, $40 an hour people doing $30 and $40 an hour jobs and $8 an hour people doing $8 an hour jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't seem like a huge task, but when you're in a business where you're getting 200 inbound phone calls a day and people are just nose to the grindstone all day long, that's a monumental task. So it's that. Yeah. Then that's building out. And large thanks in part to David. We had a commercial department, but it was one person. I think it was about 75,000 a year in revenue. And so that was one of the biggest opportunities that I saw early on in negotiating the purchase price of the agency was, we're missing massive opportunities here, not only in the marketplace, but if you take the 4,000 clients that we have, 25% of them have got to be decision makers or business owners in a business. We've got an opportunity there to scale this commercial side of the business So the other piece of that was, number one, learning commercial insurance, because as a State Farm employee, really what we knew is BOPs. That's what we knew. So learning commercial insurance, and then building the processes and hiring the people, the account managers, the CSRs, the producers, all those things, and getting those guys up to speed quickly. So we've grown that. We've really only been hammering out commercial insurance for about 2 years, and I think this year we'll cross somewhere in the neighborhood of about 800,000 in revenue. So we're not anywhere close to the opportunity that I think we have, but we've grown it pretty significantly over the last year and a half, 2 years.
So what was the most frustrating thing for you when you went down this road?
I think probably the most frustrating part was, that's not the way we did it before.
Yeah. Not a shock.
That's not how so-and-so taught us how to do it. That was probably
we do things with manila folders here, guy.
Yeah. Well, and then
where are you taking my filing cabinet, Ryan?
Yeah,
have you seen my stapler?
Exactly right. So you got a lot of that. You've got the other frustrating part for me was I didn't have to know one company. I needed to know 35 different companies and manage to a large degree 35 or 45 relationships with carriers and MGAs and all those types of things. So that was a huge piece.
Which means you had to manage about 300 relationships with individual people. Inside of all of those relationships you have to manage.
Yeah, exactly.
It snowballs really quick.
It snowballs really quick, and not wanting to be the point of contact on every single person. The other part of that was I had to develop a leadership team really quickly. So managers to help me manage departments who thought like I did, who had shared my same vision, and who were willing to trust me enough to do things the way I wanted it done, and to lead people in a really proactive and productive way, and to invest in people. So I felt like I was always just spinning plates on my fingers and dropping plates left and right and picking them up and hoping it wasn't completely broke, that just cracked and I could fix it and keep spinning it. So it was just balancing priorities and all those things. But fortunately, we haven't done it perfectly, but we're on the right track and moving in the right direction.
So I'm interested because, for you to have the number of virtual employees you have now, I know that took time for you. You didn't just go out and hire that many at one time.
Yeah.
You had to sell the use of virtual employees internally. Even though you're the figurehead of the operation, you still got to make sure people understand this is not for somebody to replace you. This is somebody to make you even more efficient and allow you to focus more on the things you actually like to do. And it's funny because a lot of the times when I talk with agencies, the pushback they get pushback from their service team on bringing VAs in, when the reality is those VAs are typically taking the tasks those people hate the most. And as soon as you can sit down and actually explain that, they can understand, oh, you mean I'm not going to have to do this, or this anymore. Now all of a sudden it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. They're all on board, right? But that being said, there's a process to bringing in virtual help. And I'm interested, like, how did you set the agency up to be able to scale that way virtually, especially knowing you were relatively new to the independent channel and you didn't even know what you had on your plate yet, Yeah. So how far in did you start making those moves, and how did you set yourself up for success to be able to scale to where you're at now?
Well, so probably the biggest mistake I made was when I started making changes, because I'm naturally inclined to the sales side of the business and not the service side. So I started making changes in the sales side. And really what that did is just exacerbated every single problem and inefficiency we had on the customer service side. So had hindsight 2020, I would have started with customer service and then went to sales. But, I'm a sales guy, so that's where I want to start. That's where my passion was. So how I did that, David, was we started improving efficiencies in the sales side, and we turned from getting, 150 inbound phone calls a month to 300 inbound. So we go from writing $100,000 a month in premium to writing $700,000, $800,000 a month. And my service team, I'm looking up and they're literally there till 8 o'clock every night. They have no life, and they're snappy and snippy with customers because they're frustrated, they're overworked, they're pissed off, they hate their jobs. So I said, okay, I've really got to dive in here and understand what you guys do every single day, and play with me here for a minute. If I can make your job easier, and if I can get you out of here at 5 o'clock, will you trust me? Will you do whatever I tell you to do? And they said, yeah. So we just started uncovering all the different jobs. Hey, walk me through every day what you do every single day. Well, would it make sense for you to do that, or would you rather someone else do that? I didn't say it was a VA, just said someone else. They didn't even know what VAs were at the time. So they said, yeah, if somebody else could do that, that would really help me. And I'm thinking in my head, unlicensed activity, right? A licensed person doesn't have to be the one going into Travelers and making the change. They just have, the licensed person has to have the conversation and take the information from the client. They don't have to be the one to go into Travelers and make the change. So we just started taking it piece by piece. So I hired 3 VAs at the first, and basically all they did was the download information. Every change we made at the agency level, when it comes through on download, we wanted to make sure that was reflected accurately the way we wanted it done. And so that's really where we started, David, is VAs just doing download stuff. And then we slowly, once they, and our VAs are maybe just a little bit different than others. Our VAs are part of our team. They're on Zoom with us every single day. They're at all of our activities, all of our events. They're in all our staff meetings. We know their kids' names, their spouses' names. And so once my service people who, they're in their 60s and they've been doing this for 30 years. So, and they've been doing it one way for 30 years. So they're a little bit stuck in the mud at this point. Once they start to trust these VAs and they're like, well, hey, I think Anna, who was one of our VAs at the time, I think Anna could do this. And I think Anna could probably help me with this. Yeah, let's do that. Let's build a process around that. So it was just a slow, it probably took a year. So I think of our 15 or 16 VEs now, I think seven of them are in customer service, and they do downloads. They do all the changes, all the policy changes. They're going into carriers' sites every day looking for pending cancels. They're the ones that are on the hold all day long with the mortgage companies, trying to get verification of payments, all those things that licensed $30 an hour employees don't need to be doing. And so now they look at them as kind of their assistants. And my whole vision was, I wanted, even my customer service reps, I wanted to spend the time building a relationship with clients on the phone so they could leverage that relationship and help them better uncover additional opportunities. And because they were so stressed and overworked, they couldn't build relationships. They didn't even have time to pivot. I call it pivot. Or upsell or cross sell. They didn't have time to do that. So now that they have time, they're now a profit center in the agency where they have expectations and they're generating a certain number of revenue dollars every single month on cross selling and upselling and sending referrals over to the commercial department. But we couldn't do that before because, number one, we didn't have VAs and they were just swamped.
So I have to believe that if I was in your shoes, and I walked in and I bought an agency that was a $2.5 million in revenue agency, even though I knew there was a huge opportunity to grow the commercial side, my biggest fear and probably what would make me personally lose sleep at night is what? What do you think I'm going to say?
Cancellations.
Retention, 100%, man.
Yep.
What did you do how did you handle that? Because for me, I almost believe that if I was going to be in that position, I would probably just spend the money and hire a PR firm to handle it and tell me exactly how I needed to do it, man.
Yeah. Well, number one, after spending $6 million on the agency and having a $75,000 principal and interest payment, I didn't have money to hire a PR firm. I was the PR firm. So, and I had built up while I was at State Farm, I'd built up a pretty sizable real estate portfolio that's what allowed me to buy this agency, is I leveraged all that. So if I failed, the bank was taking everything except my car that was paid off and my house, because in Texas, they can't take your house. everything else of mine was gone. So I didn't have the money or the resources to be able to do anything beyond what I was doing. So the number one thing I did,
I think you also just described every scratch agent that ever entered the game. And
Yeah.
I would equate you to, I honestly feel like, if I'm being completely transparent, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that disagree. I think I would rather start an agency scratch than have to acquire one that was 75 years old and figure out how to, and I'm only speaking about me personally, be patient enough to go through what you did. The journey that you went through when you bought the agency actually mirrors exactly what I did when I worked in the grocery industry before I got my first store. They tried to promote me to run a $15-16 million a year grocery store. I had never worked in the deli. I had never worked in the bakery. And there were like 3 or 4 departments, and I turned down the promotion. And they said, "Why would you do that?" I said, "Because those people will have zero respect for me if I don't know how to do what they do, and I don't show them that I'm willing to do what they do. And I'll get up at 4:00 in the morning and come in to fry the donuts and bake the bread and all that stuff." I said, "The other thing is, you're going to want me to figure out how to make these departments profitable. And if I don't know the nuts and bolts of the operation, how am I going to come in here and fix profitability issues in any kind of a perishable operation?" And so I spent the next year going through 6 months to a year, going through all of those different departments, working in all of the wild jobs that you would never expect that I would be working in. But then I knew the stuff. And the more important piece of it, and I know you figured this out from what you did, but I had the team at that point. I had the people believing they knew that I would do what needed to be done and that I had their back, And so I think that's a huge thing, but
I think Publix like makes you do that now, right? Like I think
they should.
in order to,
I think every single one of them should. Dude, you used to get promoted in the grocery industry based on how fast you could stock. That was the criteria.
that's
if you were the fastest stocker,
boy.
if you were the fastest stocker, you were at least going to be the night manager, if not number 2 person in the store within a year.
With
because
those big old catcher's mitts you got.
I know, dude. I had it perfected. I could do 4 cans at one time, and I could manipulate my hand muscles so I could rotate the labels to all be facing in the same direction while I was going. It was classic.
But I was going to ask how many cans of tomato soup can you get in your hands at once?
You know what? You guys probably can't see this, but if you look on my knuckle right there, it's on this side too. My fingers stayed raw from banging them on the shelves. I've got scar. Yeah. The grocery industry scarred me. But no, I mean, I think it's really, really important. But back to my original point is, I just think it would be a lot easier to open scratch, even though that's not any walk in the park either. At least you're starting with a blank canvas and not dealing with all of well, that's not the way we did it before. That's not the way we did it before. Because here, if anybody says that's not the way we did it before, it's usually because it's going to make something better. I'm not the best at everything in the world. You know what I mean?
Well, and I've had people say, well, I'd rather do it the way you did it because you got all this revenue coming in every month. And I always say, yeah, that was going out every month in the form of principal and interest payments and salaries.
Yeah.
Every dime was going out.
Yep.
So, and I want to give a ton of credit to Mariana Grimes, because when I bought this agency, it's not like I had to come in and fix it, because it was already a flourishing agency. She ran an incredible operation, and to get to at 70 years or whatever it was to 2.5 million in revenue was monumental in a market of 300,000 people. That's a massive undertaking. And you literally, in Lubbock, Texas, you got to live under a rock not to know who Grimes Insurance is. So she did an incredible job. I wasn't satisfied, and I didn't buy the agency to stay stagnant at 2.5 million in revenue. The opportunity for me was 30 and 40 and 50 million in revenue. And so that's the undertaking I went. It wasn't to fix anything. It was to modernize, and it was to scale the thing and to just put the thing on steroids.
Okay, so let's build off of that for a second, because you're in Lubbock, Texas, obviously finite. There's only so many opportunities you're going to get there. How do you scale from the 5 million you're going to hit this year to the 30, 40, 50 million down the road?
That's a great question. That if there's one thing that keeps me up at night, that's what it is. So historically, David, we've been, we're 100% referral based, and our referrals come from lenders, realtors, and mortgage brokers. That's who it comes from. And so to scale, what we've done is done more of that, right? So we're in other markets outside of Lubbock now, doing the exact same thing, training producers to take our model and to go out and generate referrals from those referral sources. The other piece is, I want to continue to acquire other agencies, but I knew we had to get the foundation right, because I figured if we had the foundation right, meaning we have the systems and processes at the customer service level and at the sales level where we can just go out and generate more business and just throw it on top. All we have to do is add another VA here, or another customer service rep here, or another salesperson here, and the systems don't change. So the other piece is the commercial market in Lubbock, Texas has been virtually untapped. There's one firm here that's about our same age, but they've been acquired. I think just in the 5 years that I've owned Grimes, I think they've been acquired 3 times. So I don't consider them a local agency any longer. Outside of them, they're the only commercial game in town. And so that's the other piece of the plan, is to continue to attack the commercial market with a level of aggression that we've not experienced yet. So those 3 pieces there, continuing to put other personal line sales producers in other markets and to be able to take our same model to generate referrals and continue to do that. And we've been successful at doing that. Continue doing that. And each one of those producers is generating total between their comp and our comp that we split somewhere in the neighborhood of $8,000 to $10,000 a month in revenue. So that process is proven and it's working. So it's a matter of how many of those can we add on a year? How many of those can we throw down with a year? And then it's continuing to acquire other agencies in other markets and basically just pile that right on top of ours, and then aggression in the commercial space like we've never seen.
So if there's people out there that are thinking about acquiring an agency or agencies, what's a piece of advice you'd give them?
The number one advice that I've given people that have called and asked is, you have to think of this as a sales. This is the biggest sale of your life. And when I sat down with Mariana, she had a minority partner at the time that owned, I think, 2.5% or maybe 5% of the agency. That was the biggest sales meeting of my life. And so you've got to think, when you're sitting down with the owner of an agency, it's a mom and pop shop, that is a sales meeting, and you're there to solve their problem, because they have a problem. They need to unload this agency, and they have certain criteria they're looking for. Mariana's criteria was, I don't want my team to lose their jobs, and I care about my family's name. All I had to do was solve those 2 problems, and I was the buyer, assuming the purchase price and all those things worked out. So the advice I give to people is, you've got to find the problem, and you've got to solve the problem, because there is a problem. If it's an agency that you're trying to acquire that is just after money, run. If that's the solution, is the biggest check somebody can write, then run. That's the wrong agency to buy, in my opinion, unless they have it severely undervalued. But if there's a legitimate, true problems that you can solve, that's what you've got to do, is solve the problem.
There you go.
So are you thinking that you're going to stay in Texas? Or are you looking to expand into other states? What does that look like?
So my biggest problem right now is I'm in Hale Alley. So in 5 years, we've met profit sharing with one carrier one time, because every 2 to 3 years we have a monumental, massive hailstorm.
Yeah,
so we're leaving on let's just say a $35 million book. We're leaving probably $500,000 or more on the table every year. So to answer your question, David, I'm open to leaving the state of Texas. We're already writing business in other states in small amounts. I need to diversify our opportunity so that we can offset our cat losses here and build opportunities elsewhere where we can leverage here out of this agency. We can leverage the potential profit sharing. So to answer your question, I'm 100% open to acquiring and or continuing to write business outside of the state. Just as well, I'm open to be in other parts of the state of Texas that don't have the hail risk that we have here.
Yeah, I feel like Texas is getting plagued on all fronts, though. It's not
Recently,
limited to
man, they've
just
been
that.
getting hammered with
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff. The snow, whenever
Yeah.
that was
The
that
freeze,
last
The
year?
freeze.
Yeah,
Freeze 2 years
right.
ago.
Yeah.
Well, plus coastal Texas is every bit as bad as Florida is, if not worse.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the problem. If you go to DFW, Dallas Fort Worth area, you've got, 10 million rooftops and hailstorm every 3 years. But if you go farther south than that, about the only safe place in Texas is Austin. And premiums are so low in Austin, or I guess out in El Paso, but same thing. Premiums are so small out there. Those are really the only two safe places. Austin gets a little bit of hail, but nothing like we get out here. But you go farther south, you go down into McAllen or Corpus Christi or Houston, every 5 years or so, you get some type of hurricane exposure. And so it's tough. So we're open to opportunities outside of the state and cautiously open to opportunities elsewhere in the state of Texas.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, man, because a lot of the stuff that we've experienced over the course of our history is now affecting so many people in other parts of the country that just aren't used to seeing that type of activity and in the market hardening the way that it is hardened. I mean, and the problem is, you kind of alluded to it with Austin. At least in Florida, the premium pricing model is built to absorb it to some degree. You're dealing with people like I've got a lot of friends out in Nebraska, Kansas, that area that are getting crushed with hail too.
Yeah.
And the amount of premium that you can get for a home there versus what you get for a home here, it's like 10% of the premium. Like if my house was in Kansas, I would probably pay about $500 a year, $500 to $1,000 a year for my homeowner's insurance. I pay just over $5,000 a year right now.
Yep. That's
and
right.
just so we're very, very clear, people, I ain't living in the Taj Mahal. I live well below our means in a ranch that's 2,000 square feet built in 1980. That's what $5,254 a year gets you in Florida.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy.
Insurance. Yep. Same thing. Well, and I just wrote, a buddy of mine lives in the state of Utah, just outside of Salt Lake City. I just wrote his house. I think it's insured. I think we insured it for somewhere $800,000. And I think his premium was $980. And it's a 50-year-old house.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. And we're at a point now, and I have to be careful because I will say that part of the reason the premium has grown on my home the way that it has is because coverage A has also grown substantially. So, I mean, the real estate market is also contributing to what's going on with the premium pricing, because my house right now, comps in my area are $500,000 and I paid barely $200,000 for it when I bought it. So, I can't complain too much other than it still sucks to know that much is going toward insurance. And the longer this goes on, the more I'm beginning to understand why some of these ultra wealthy people just decide they're going to self-insure for it and say, screw it, I'm not going to do it, because, $5,000 a year is a material amount of money. Like you can look at the analysis on it, and likely something massive is not going to happen above and beyond that. And let's face it, when you've got $500,000 on coverage A, you're at 25 or 50 grand, depending on where your wind deductible is anyhow. So you're going to self-insure for the majority of the wind related stuff, unless your house is completely trashed. So I don't know, man. It's an interesting time. I keep hearing that we're going to have relief. I feel like that even with the AI and everything else that's out there, that as agents, we still should be very, very secure in our jobs.
Yeah.
We should be very secure that people will always need advice, because I don't know how you navigate the market otherwise.
Well, I think if there are folks that are in jeopardy long term, I think it's the transactional folks, the people who are genuinely trying to establish relationships with people and provide a significant amount of value, whether it's advice or whatnot. those are the folks who I think are 100% secure, short term and long term, in their careers. But yeah, and then you couple that with, because we're right here in Hale Alley, and you guys are experiencing the same thing in Florida. You got carriers that are, pulling out like crazy. Nothing like what you guys have experienced, but here, five of our property this year, top property carriers, whether it's commercial or personal lines, they're gone. Gone. They just can't sustain the losses. They weren't generating enough premium per structure or per 100. So they're gone. So all that does is scare the snot out of other carriers, larger carriers. And so they raise rates to try to compensate. And it's a tough time to be in this business, but I think there's never been a better opportunity and a better time to be in the business than there is right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the hard market certainly lends itself to people who are willing to look past the current state and recognize what's to come. Yeah. And this is the time you build your business, man. I mean, a lot of people are running from it, but I'm doubling down. I think we're going to have the greatest year we've ever had in 2024.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why I'm not traveling and speaking and doing a bunch of the other stuff I've done the last couple of years. Is I'm going to stay here and we're going to man the ship, but this thing's getting ready to take off in a way it hasn't.
Yeah. Yep. Well, my team and I just yesterday morning had a conversation, and somebody mentioned the term hard market. And I said, you're absolutely right. It is hard. For the first time in your career, you got to sell. You're right. It is hard. We're not in the quote and hope game anymore. This is a sales game. And that's what it is. You've got to have real intentional conversations with people. You've got to follow up with people, and you've got to do a really good job of helping them understand why their premium went from $2,500 a year to $3,800 a year. Yeah, it's a hard market. It's a tough job to sell.
The number one trait I think that producers or salespeople in general in our industry need to have, that's the hardest for them, is patience. Because in a market like this, education is what's going to get you deals done, and showing that you know and understand the market and being able to reduce that to layman's terms and describe that to the average person who doesn't know how insurance works and thinks it's 15% in 15 minutes or less. Listen, man, I got to be honest with you. We're in Florida. Every flipping day on the news, there's something else about rates going up, how hard the market is, whatever else. And I still, even in the middle market, we'll have a renewal and the person's like, what's going on with insurance? I can't believe my rates. And I have to stop because, like, I just want to. Do you ever watch the freaking news, man? Like, what are you talking about?
So frustrating.
You don't know what's going on in the insurance marketplace. How do you not insure your vehicles? Do you not insure your home? It's not limited to this. It's everything, literally everything out there. And you really have to consciously, mentally prepare yourself to go in. And I mean, to me, I can get very, very frustrated very, very quickly, especially over things that I feel like somebody should know if they just pay attention to what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
But but when I'm in the right mind frame, when I know that I'm going to go in and I'm likely going to have to break it down and explain it, I actually enjoy doing that, because I know that this isn't just about me winning this client this year. I'm going to earn a client for life unless I do something really, really stupid down the road by taking the time to treat them the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of breaking it down and explaining to people, and education is the key right now. We just made it. It seems like a really small shift, but it's a monumental change in our agency. So we have 6 people that their full-time job is to remarket business, whether it's commercial or personal lines. 2 or maybe 3 weeks ago, we changed their title from remarketing specialist to retention specialist. Emphasis being, we're not in the quoting game.
Yep.
We're in the conversation and the education game. So instead of calling them with 5 different quotes or different options in hand, we're calling them to say, hey, let's talk about your renewal. Here's what's going on in the marketplace. Here's why your building valuation went up to what it went. Here's why your rate went from this to this. Here's why. Let us see if we can make a couple of changes. Here's what we recommend. Let's do those. Let's see what the cost difference is before we take you to market and start reshopping you. So I feel like that just little shift just in the minds of our team has has made a huge shift from.
Well, you immediately went from
remarketing
salesperson to trusted advisor just by having
Yep.
a strategy call up front, right?
Yep.
No lawyer is going to take your case to trial to represent you without having several meetings, depositions, all the things that go into it. No accountant is going to file your taxes without taking the time to review all of the information and have a conversation with you about where you want to be in the future versus where you are now and all of that stuff. Why in the world do we just go to the marketplace, come back and say, oh, by the way, here's what we have for you? No, there's nothing that says this can't be a two-way conversation.
Yeah. And here's the bottom line. They can do that themselves. They don't need us to do that. They can go, we got a massive rater called Google.
Yep.
They can put their stuff in there and then come back with quotes. They don't need us to do that. What they need is a trusted advisor, somebody that can understands the market and can explain it and help them understand how that relates to their specific risk.
Mm-hmm.
That's what people need. You can't get that on Google.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, man, it's never limited to just the thing that's in front of you, right? When you're focused on being an insurance salesperson, the only thing you're focused on is that actual insurance policy, the premium the client's going to pay, and subsequently how much revenue the agency makes and how much commission you get. In this market, especially in the commercial arena, you have to be paying attention to way more. And I'm not even talking about the risk management stuff. I could spend obviously days, if not weeks or months, talking about that. I'm talking about simple things. Like a lot of the people who have accounts need to be paying attention to premium financing. What's the rate on the finance agreement at this point? Because there's some of these finance companies that have jacked the rate to the point that you might have a higher quote in terms of premium, but the payment stream in is lower because the finance rate is lower than what it was on the lower quote. So if you're not going in and looking to see what kind of terms you're getting from your premium finance partner, thank God IPFS takes care of us and makes sure that we're always going to have the best quote possible. But at the end of the day, man, this is one of those things, because more people, that's the other thing, more people are getting pushed into E&S than were before. Mm-hmm. So financing becomes a bigger portion of the game.
Yeah, much bigger. Yeah, and I think, so many people I hear from them that, well, hey, I can mark this up and I can make a split on it. Well, it's a better deal. It's a better deal for your client to take an agency fee than it is to mark it up on your premium finance account. Why aren't you doing that? You gotta think differently, and what's in the best interest of the client. And you got to make what you need to make to be able to cover your cost and have some profit, but you got to be thinking differently than we were thinking 3 and 4 years ago.
Yeah, and my mind on the premium finance thing, honestly, is, it's a service that we offer. We do gain some revenue from it, but I'm not in the premium finance business.
Yep.
That's not going to be the lion's share of revenue that we have coming in, and it's certainly not going to be the lion's share of revenue coming in at the client's expense. So as long as I'm making enough money to cover the time and energy that it takes for us to actually go in and handle that and chase down late payments and everything else, I'm okay with it, man. I'm okay with breaking even, because I'm going to make my money in the other areas of my operation. Maybe I'm short-sighted by looking at that, but I know that if I'm taking care of the client and doing what's best for them, that it's going to be a lot harder for somebody to come in and poke holes in my game and take that account from me, because they're going to be loyal to me for the things that I've done to help control costs all along. And I'll point that out. But if I'm just going to go in and say, well, I could probably get a couple more points here, which is going to make my spread bigger, which means I get more money, I may win financially in the short term, but at renewal, somebody's going to come in and hose me, and they're going to take it from me.
Yeah. Well, and it's perspective too. You got to understand what the lifetime value of a client is in your agency. Yep. And if you understand the lifetime value of the client in your agency, then you're not going to bicker and fight over $200 or $300, $400 or $1,000, because you understand the bigger picture. If I retain this client for whatever your average is, 7 years, 10 years, I'm going to make this. So, I feel like that happens a lot. Agency owners I talk to, they're fighting and they're picking arguments over $1,000. I'm like, well, what's the lifetime value of the client? $10,000. Yeah. Then why are we talking about $1,000?
100%, man. 100%. Well, listen, we are a little bit over, but great conversation. I want to be respectful of your time, man. Tell them where they can tune into Insurance Leaders. I assume everywhere podcasts are heard, and then some. And then tell people how they can get it. If they want to reach out and hear more about Ryan Reynolds and what you're doing, maybe they heard something that, sparked an idea or a question they had. How do they get a hold of you?
It's Insurance Leaders Podcast. We drop every Thursday morning at 6 a.m. Any place, like David said, any place you listen to a podcast, the Insurance Leaders Podcast. And then personally, you can connect with me, Facebook or Instagram, Ryan J. Reynolds 79, or just look me up, Ryan Reynolds. There's only two of us. I'm not the one with the Mint Mobile logo on my Facebook picture, though.
Yet.
You're not the Deadpool guy?
Yeah, I'm not the Deadpool guy.
Hey, listen, man, you scheduled a 30, 40, 50 million. You don't know what you're going to have in the hopper at that point.
That's true. That's true. So, yeah, those are the best ways to connect with me. Grimesinsurance.com. You can find my information there, too.
Cool.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, thanks for taking an hour out of your day to come hang with us. Great conversation. Really appreciate your time. People, check out Insurance Leaders Podcast. I've listened to quite a few of those episodes. Actually, I listened to one of those episodes that had a certain young man who has a little bit of a tender spot in my heart. You guys actually had Grayson come on and interviewed him at one point. So
yeah,
nice.
Yeah, I think about maybe 4 or 6 months ago we had Grayson on, and he killed it. I'm excited to have him on here in another year or two, and he's going to be crushing it. I'm excited.
Yeah,
for him.
he's speaking of patience, I'm taking it very, very slow with him, probably much slower than he would like me to. But I also know what happens in this industry when you try and go too fast, and slowing down to speed up is my MO always. So
yeah, love it.
All right, guys. Well, listen, we're going to run. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. We will catch you next time. We have had Ryan Reynolds from Grimes Insurance in Lubbock, Texas, along with my co-host, Mr. Kyle Houck, who is sickness-free today.
Today, baby.
We're glad to have him. Everybody will catch you next time. See ya.